this is Caitlin with One Mind Dogs, and I am going to do your video review for your foundation exercises that you've been working on. So overall, this is looking very good. I'm glad that you were able to find some good weather so you could go find your grassy field and get some training in. That is really, really great. And I was seeing some really awesome things in your videos. So there was just a couple things that I wanted to point out, especially in this first one. When you're doing the pre-placed reward ahead, I find that it really helps the further away you are to go ahead and set yourself and the dog up first, toss the reward ahead in some way, and then send them to it. The more distance we have in this exercise, the harder it is to get the dog to want to focus on the thing because they have to find it first. So keep that in mind, that the further away things are, the better it is to sometimes go ahead and just toss it right before you release the dog, so then they are able to focus on it. Otherwise, this was very nice. Your beginning, you forgot to take your step, but after that, you did start to take your step to release your dog and to commit her. So you're looking at the dog, which is really good, and you're waiting for the dog to look forward. But then just keep in mind, the further away from the thing you are, the more the dogs are going to look at us, and it's actually that step that helps them commit to it. But make sure that you are the one releasing the dog and not the dog releasing themselves. So make sure that you say some sort of a release cue as you take that step. That's going to help you with your start line stays in the future. So it's one of those little details that really makes a big difference, because you can see here, if we're looking at it with no sound and we're just stepping forward, nothing about your body is telling the dog to go. You have your dog side leg back, everything is very upright, other than looking at the dog and saying a release word. Nothing else is indicating that the dog should run forward to find the toy. So make sure that you keep in mind that commitment step is a very important moment. It gets us in the habit of actually committing the dog to what we need them to do. And then it also allows us to be in the habit of having that step happen. So you have our connection, and then you just want to step with your dog side leg to actually commit the dog to that line. But otherwise, this exercise looked really good. The play looks really nice. We have some good tug going on with that toy. And if I have an exercise where I have the toy out, I would go ahead and just use that toy for the whole thing. I wouldn't necessarily switch to food. For a lot of dogs, switching between food and toys is quite difficult. So if they're really interested in tugging, I'm just going to utilize that as my reward. If I want to do food for my reward, I'm going to go ahead and use that from the beginning and have it in like a treat toy or a bowl. But this looks very nice. That was better. I like this version where you're tossing the toy because it allows the dog to really see where it is before you release them, so their eyes are already able to focus on it. You have good connection with your dog here, and then just remember to take your step with your dog side leg, which you remembered after the fact. So as you say that release cue, you want to step with your dog side leg, and your dog side arm should also be forward, because that's forming those good habits. But overall, this was a very nice session, and I like the play that's happening. On your next one, this is where we have a little bit more movement happening, because this is you're moving with the dog. But same idea with that. You want to try to be in the habit of connecting with the dog and saying your release word. I didn't hear in a lot of this session in particular you actually releasing your dog. It was like your dog went forward and then you just happened to be ready. So make sure that you actually say your release word. You may have been saying it and I just didn't hear it through the video. But then similar idea, even if we are moving with the dog, we want to make sure that as we release them, we have our dog side arm towards them so we can kind of follow them with our guiding arm as they start to pass us, and then make sure that your eyes are staying towards the dog. As soon as you see that moment of commitment, so there, she's already very strongly committed, you can already start giving praising cues like yes, good, amazing, all of those things. So at this point, you're essentially only giving those marker cues when your dog reaches the toy rather than noticing that moment that your dog commits to the toy. So just keep that in mind. A lot of what you're wanting to focus on in your foundation is getting a focus on that moment the dog commits and really being able to trust that commitment. So even when the exercises, the topic isn't as strongly related to commitment, it really does help to still try to see those moments. So keep that in mind as you're working in your future exercises. Ooh. And that's also why it's really important that you say your release word and your marker cues, so that if your dog self-releases, you're able to have it be different. So if my dog is correct, I'm immediately saying my release word. For my dogs, that's break. So it'd be a break, get it. And as they're running to it, I could already be saying, yeah, super, and all of that extra stuff. And then if they self-release, I can go, uh-oh. And I can be very unexcited and very unenthused, and then they can notice the difference between if they self-release and not. Otherwise, it's a beautiful start line stays, and then keep your eyes towards the dog as you release. So you can see that as you say your release word, your eyes look forward at the toy. In that case, you are committing yourself to the toy. So try to make sure that your eyes stay towards the dog so you can notice that moment of commitment. All right, next one. We're starting to get a little distracted, which happens. The longer the sessions are, the more distracted the dogs can tend to be because they can kind of get bored, especially when it's a lot of staying exercises back to back. Nice. That was really beautiful. So what I love about that is you had good connection towards the dog as you were leading out, and as you were releasing, your head was towards the dog. You're actually taking that step, and that arm is starting to move forward towards where the dog needs to go. And then just make sure that your eyes stay towards the dog as they pass rather than going towards the toy. But that was very nice. And you can see that your dog very confidently drives past you to the toy, which is fantastic. And you're getting a lot of really good excitement. This tug looks great. This was very nice. Yay, so same problem there. I think you could see it. As you're releasing the dog, keep your eyes towards the dog rather than the toy, because in the future that will be your jumps. So just keep that in your head. Keep your eyes towards the dog as they're going rather than looking at the reward. But this is very nice. I love the enthusiasm that your dog has. Okay, so we have a little bit of distraction going on, but now we have a little more brain power. I like to give the dogs just a little bit of restraint there, so I might grab the dog's collar so I can make sure that they're looking where I need them to go. If I'm just getting them beside me, I can usually get them around the object, but it's not going to be as much excitement as if I get a little bit of resistance and do a little bit of a collar grab or a chest hold. So in this case, I would go ahead and get the dog beside you, and then I would hold onto the collar so you have a chance to actually take your commitment step. It's very nice. And then same problem there. Your eyes started to jump ahead to the toy. So you get the commitment. Let's see if we can catch it. The dog is anticipating the commitment, so you take that step. As you take the step, you want to immediately leave towards the toy as the dog is rounding that cone. And then as the dog finishes rounding, you can take that commitment step and then move away, but make sure your eyes stay with the dog. And that's why we work these exercises in those smaller instances, so we can really focus on the individual components. So you had great connection with your dog through here, but then as you take your step, your eyes start to jump ahead. So now your dog is moving towards the reward, but you don't really know if they are committed. And that's important because in the future, when that's no longer a toy and instead it is a jump or a tunnel or something like that, we want to know that the dog is looking at the thing before we leave. That was very nice. And look at that! She's bringing the toy back to you too. That's fantastic. And then I would play, play, play. Very good. There you go. And think like a bunny on the ground. Look at that. That is really good. And that would have been awesome if your dog was offering that in the other exercises where they're bringing that toy back. Very nice. So we have our connection for sending. Make sure you step with the dog side leg. That commitment step makes a big difference because it's going to look the same whether you are 1 meter from your obstacle or 6 meters or 10 meters, so on. So you have really good connection, and then you just need that step with the dog side leg as your dog is passing you so that you can go. You can see that all of your pressure, let me see if I can catch the moment. Everything here, there was no commitment step. So you can see here, you're looking at the eye, my goodness, tongue twister. Your eyes are looking at the reward. Your dog side leg is back. Your chest is back. So everything is cueing slow down and turn. So at this moment, your dog is passing you, but the dog hasn't actually started to look at the toy to commit. I think the dog's eyes are actually looking here. So when you turn and leave, the dog is just coming with you. So that's a big reason why it's really important that when you're taking that dog side leg step, you are looking at the dog so you know what they're looking at. You handled this very well, though, by getting back over here and getting the dog to go to the reward. And that's about keeping the commitment. So not only do we have the seeing the commitment that needs to happen, but then we also need the dog to keep that commitment once they have it. Similar idea here. I'd pull the dog beside me, do a little bit of a restraint so I could pull back on their collar a little bit and kind of do a ready, go type of situation. Love the focus here. Good for you. You got a little bouncy there, so you're resetting, which is fine. That's exactly what I would do as well, because you don't want that habit in the future with the bouncing. So if you don't like that, usually the dogs do it out of frustration or a question mark. So when that happens, I'm just going to reset and try again, so I can have a little bit more focus before I send. And calmness. Yay. Good. That time you were looking more at the dog and you stepped with your dog side leg. So that was very nice. Makes a difference if you're looking more towards the dog's eyes as you're taking that step to see if they commit versus if you're just looking at the toy. So that was much better. A little more distance. And moving. And then look at the dog rather than the reward. Yay, look at that! And then have a huge party. Very nice. Okay, now we're looking at number 6. Sort of nice line of obstacles. Beautiful start line again. Nice. Look at that. Get that thing. Good job. And a lot of times when I'm rewarding with a toy, it's good to get in the habit to reward in motion. So I would have your jumps a little bit further back on this field unless there's more grass over here, so that as the dog is reaching you, you can just move until they catch you so they can get that reward in motion. Otherwise, what happens, you have great connection. Otherwise, what happens right here, you can see it, that big slowdown to get the toy, and they have to kind of get into it. So it can be slightly demotivating. So I just move until the dog catches you, maybe even do a little turn in a circle away from them so they can keep moving to get to that toy. It's just a little more motivating and exciting, which is fantastic for the dogs that really like to tug and get the things. Very nice. Moving, moving. Yay! And then do you see that, how your eyes looked away? So this is very good. Keep a little bit of your connection towards the dog as you lead out. You do fix it, but keep your head a little bit towards her as you go. Nice. And then you see here, where are you looking? So now you're only looking at where you're sending rather than looking at the dog and committing to that reward. So keep that in mind. Look at the dog rather than the thing you're sending to. And then same idea, I would just go ahead and keep moving until the dog is getting to that reward, because it also teaches the dogs to react to our rhythm changes. If we are stopping and we're sending them to something past us, we're teaching them to ignore our slowdown cues. So it's really good that if you have any type of movement, just keep that movement until the dog actually reaches the toy. Some really good stuff in here. So similar idea, keep your connection a little bit towards the dog as you go. So you know what the dog is looking at, because the dogs will always go where they're looking. Get it! Yay! Super! Bravo! Similar idea there. Keep your eyes towards the dog. It's something so simple. And it gets us every time because we want to look at what we're sending them to. It's something that everybody does. It's so good to get in the habit. So here, keep your eyes a little bit more towards the line just ahead of your dog rather than looking at the toy, so then you know what's happening. So for example, there, just was a little close for the jumping. That, but I love all this excitement and the enthusiasm that's happening, and you're taking a good amount of time for your play. The play is the most important thing because it's what makes it so exciting for them. So all of that is really good. And make sure that your dog is looking when you throw the toy, otherwise they can tend to miss it. So I can kind of just glance back at the dog before I toss it. Staying connected, looking at the dog just ahead of them. Yay, look at that. Very nice. And that one also would be really good on your next repetition if you didn't have it pre-placed, and then as they're coming through that final jump, you're kind of running and tossing it ahead, or running and doing that little half circle we talked about. But this looked very nice. All right, last one. I love the enthusiasm, and the little growling is really good too. That's very nice. Oops, I missed that one, sorry. Oh, no, you edited it that way. Okay, I was like, did I jump ahead? It's just what happened, which is okay. Yeah, look at all this. This enthusiasm to stay on the toy as you go all the way to your start line is perfect. That's exactly the kind of stuff that keeps the dogs not distracted from the things around them because they're so focused on what we're doing. And then just make sure that when you're setting the dog up, that they are focused and ready for you to move away. Sometimes there's a good smell, or they're finishing chewing a cookie and they glance up and we're gone, so they just want to follow us. Yay! There you go. And then there, you'll want to toss it before the dog has a chance to look at you. Otherwise, what's happening is you're rewarding the dog for glancing at you, and then they have to kind of redirect. So the moving ahead is fantastic. I really like it, but then just toss your toy sooner, or plan to do that little spin that you started to do there, because you can see, too far, sorry, how the dog started to turn towards you. You could reinforce that by turning as well and then running back that way. So they want to really go forward, and then you're just pivoting there. But the goal when you're trying to reward a forward focus is that you're rewarding while the dog is still looking forward. So you'll just want to toss that toy earlier, or go ahead and have it pre-placed up here when you're doing that running. But I would have it further away so it's not so close there, so they still continue past that final jump through there. All right, but overall, this is a very nice session. The enthusiasm is great, the connection to you is great, the playing is great, so just make sure that you're working on your connection to the dog, and all the rest comes easy.